17. Alna Fantasia Ford. During a late-night visit to a Jack-in-the-Box restaurant in Houston in 2021, Anthony Ramos noticed his curly fries were missing from his combo meal. He asked drive-thru employee Alna Fantasia Ford for his side, but she allegedly refused to give Ramos his fries. During the heated argument that ensued, Ford threw ketchup packets, ice, and other items at Ramos, who chucked the items back at the woman. In an attempt to de-escalate the situation, Ford's co-worker closed the drive-thru window, but Ford was apparently unwilling to let the disagreement go. In a terrifying act of violence that was captured on camera, the enraged worker pulled a gun and fired several shots at the window, prompting Ramos to speed off and dial 911. Luckily, nobody was injured. Ford was initially charged with felony assault, but pleaded guilty to a reduced misdemeanor count of deadly conduct. She was banned from owning a gun and sentenced to 1 year of community supervision as part of a deferred adjudication agreement, which means that she'll avoid a permanent conviction as long as she obeys the terms of her release. In a civil lawsuit seeking at least $250,000 in damages, Ramos accused Ford of trying to kill him. He claimed that he was so traumatized by the incident that he could no longer function normally at work and had to quit his job. The lawsuit accuses the company of being negligent by hiring Ford despite her criminal record, and by failing to have policies and measures in place to ensure that employees weren't carrying guns on the job. During an interview with local station KTRK, Ford denied that the violent confrontation stemmed from a disagreement over curly fries. She accused Ramos of threatening her and using racial slurs, which Ramos denied. When a reporter asked her why she shot at Ramos, she claimed that there was no audio of the gun going off in the surveillance video, which did not record any sound. A muzzle flash could be seen in the footage, and the police reportedly found a shell casing at the scene. The restaurant denies responsibility in the shooting, and the lawsuit is ongoing. 16. Daryl Clemens. 31-year-old Shaquille Lattimore was volunteering as an assistant coach for a youth football team called the St. Louis Bad Boys during the fall of 2023, when 43-year-old Daryl Clemens got upset over his son's lack of playing time. The dispute dragged on for weeks before coming to a terrifyingly violent end. Upset that his son wasn't in the starting lineup, Clemens allegedly opened fire on Lattimore during practice one day. The first shot struck Lattimore in the back as he tried running away. He collapsed and was shot 3 more times. Lattimore survived his injuries, but faces a long road to recovery. He accused Clemens of standing over him and taunting him as he lay on the ground while other parents joined in on the mockery. Clemens claimed that he acted in self-defense after Lattimore showed him the gun before handing it to a friend and challenging him to a fistfight. Several witnesses reportedly backed Clemens' version of events, telling police that Lattimore was the aggressor and that he approached Clemens from several hundred feet away for the sole purpose of confronting him. Authorities nevertheless charged Clemens with first-degree assault and armed criminal action. He pleaded not guilty and is being held without bond while the case plays out. Lattimore told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch that he had his gun with him because the team practices in a rough part of the city. He said he handed the gun to a friend because he didn't want Clemens to feel threatened. Regardless of who started it or who's at fault, it seems utterly senseless that the altercation ended in gunfire. Sadly, this is just one of many encounters involving parents of young athletes that have made headlines in recent years. These incidents are on the rise, leaving many coaches and officials feeling unsafe. The problem's gotten so bad in some cases that coaches have gotten used to being abused and threatened. Consequently, many sports leagues and school districts are enacting new policies to protect sports officials. In New York State, for example, any spectator who gets kicked out of a game between public schools for unruly behavior must complete a parent course or miss the next game as well. Rules like this shouldn't be necessary among grown adults, but sadly, this is what it's coming down to. 15. Camilia McMilly. Meltdowns inside airports and on passenger planes happen so often these days that it takes a lot for a particular incident to stand out among the rest. A 25-year-old woman from Alabama achieved that feat in late 2022 after losing track of her children at Miami National Airport. Camilia McMilly was checking in for an American Airlines flight to New York City when her two kids wandered off to the bathroom. When she realized the 8 and 6-year-old were no longer with her, she allegedly launched into a violent tirade and screamed at the gate agent to find the youngsters. Footage of the disastrous rampage showed the irate mother ripping a boarding pass reader off the counter. The destruction continued, and at some point McMilly picked up a computer and threw it at an airline employee, who was left with a bruise but luckily avoided any serious injuries. Needless to say, McMilly didn't make her flight. While her behavior seemed like the product of sheer rage at first glance, not everyone saw it that way. One witness who watched the chaos unfold told local station WSVN that McMilly went into panic mode. In other words, she was worried about her kids more than anything. But being a concerned mother didn't get her off the hook for the $10,000 in damages she allegedly caused. Instead of boarding her flight, McMilly was taken into custody and charged with aggravated battery, criminal mischief, and disorderly conduct. News station Local 10 was waiting to greet her when she bonded out of jail a few days later, but she didn't have much to say. When a reporter asked McMilly if she threw the computer, she nodded yes. She shrugged when the reporter asked if the computer hit an employee, and when asked if she wanted to say anything to the worker, McMilly simply said, "I'm sorry." The exasperated mother confirmed that her kids were safe and sound with their grandmother in Birmingham and ended the interview. 14. Melbourne road rage attack. After picking up her brothers from school in Melbourne, Australia, one afternoon in July 2023, a young woman named Taylor Isaac merged in front of a Volkswagen Golf. Most people would consider this to be an ordinary traffic maneuver, but it apparently made the Volkswagen driver feel cut off. The unidentified motorist sped up to Isaac, swerved in front of her, and threw a metal bottle at her car. While stopped at a traffic light, the man exited his vehicle, approached Taylor's vehicle, and punched her passenger side window repeatedly in a fit of rage. Cell phone footage showed the disgruntled driver yanking at Taylor's door handle and kicking her car in a fit of rage. Terrified about what might come next, the young woman sped off. After ensuring she'd gotten safely away from the Volkswagen driver, she pulled over to call the police. In the meantime, a witness stopped to make sure she was okay. Taylor posted the video of the stranger's tantrum in a community group on social media as a warning to other local drivers about his explosive behavior. The clip went viral and garnered widespread sympathy from commenters who struggled to wrap their minds around the man's extreme display of anger. Shortly after the story broke, Victoria Police told Daily Mail Australia that they were looking into the incident. It's unclear whether any arrests were made. 13. Richard Sonka. Concerned friend walked in on a horror scene one day in February 2023 when they found 58-year-old Rhonda Chegelski and 53-year-old Paula O'Connor stabbed to death in an apartment in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Police quickly identified 48-year-old Richard Sonka, who was dating one of the women, as a person of interest in the case. Sonka was already wearing an ankle monitor for an unrelated stalking and harassment case out of Oconto County. But it did little good with helping law enforcement locate him because he allegedly cut the bracelet off and skipped town. After finding the discarded monitor in a ditch along an interstate, they started looking for other ways to locate Sonka. Thankfully, there was an OnStar GPS tracking system in Sonka's vehicle, and authorities caught up with him in Arkansas about 10 hours after the bodies were found. During questioning, he allegedly confessed to killing Chegelski and O'Connor, but he denied the allegations in the stalking case. He reportedly told interrogators that he walked in on the women being intimate with one another and felt humiliated. According to investigators, Sonka said that one of the women asked him to leave the house, causing him to snap. He admitted to being drunk and using stimulants on the day the attack occurred. During the interview, Sonka revealed that he'd gone to prison 21 years earlier for snapping on a woman he was dating at the time. He admitted to knocking out several of the victim's teeth, fracturing her skull and breaking her leg. When asked what brought him to Arkansas, he reportedly said he wanted to take one last drive before he inevitably lost his freedom. Sonka was extradited back to Wisconsin, where he faces 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with a dangerous weapon and 1 count of felony bail jumping. He faces several other charges from previous cases, including criminal damage to property, felony bail jumping, and 2 misdemeanor counts of bail jumping. His trial is scheduled for March 2024. 12. Anthony Redding. In February 2018, a 49-year-old Ohio man named Anthony Wayne Redding punched his girlfriend so hard during an argument that she lost an eye. He was charged with felonious assault and pleaded not guilty, claiming that he acted in self-defense. Redding had a violent criminal history, which included previous convictions for aggravated assault and felonious assault. Given his record, he faced a potentially lengthy prison sentence if convicted for a 3rd time. The jury found Redding guilty, and he immediately became visibly upset when the verdict was read. While waiting for the judge to announce his punishment, he said that he'd just received a death sentence and called the judge Satan. Sensing Redding's anger, a deputy approached, ready to act if the situation became dangerous. Courtroom footage showed the defendant firmly grabbing his button-down shirt with both hands and ripping it open, causing several of the buttons to pop off. The judge told Redding that his behavior wasn't helping the situation, while the deputy standing nearby urged him to relax. In yet another display of defiance, he grabbed the bottom of his shirt with both hands and yanked again, causing the few remaining buttons to come off. He then shrugged and said that the shirt was too small anyway. Unmoved by the display, the judge halted the proceedings and ordered deputies to put Redding in restraints before he continued on to the sentencing phase. Redding continued running his mouth while being handcuffed to a waist belt and made some direct remarks to the prosecutor, who urged the judge to impose the maximum sentence. When asked if he had anything left to say, Redding denied his guilt. Citing his lack of remorse, the judge sentenced him to the 18-year maximum. Redding will be 68 years old when he becomes eligible for release in 2037. In the meantime, hopefully he'll find healthier ways to process his explosive anger. 11. Joseph Katarino. 58-year-old Joseph Katarino was facing charges for non-violent financial crimes in Houston, Texas in December 2021 when he attended a court hearing to discuss his defense attorney's recent withdrawal from the case. During the proceeding, he allegedly became frustrated with the judge's questions about how he planned to move forward with his defense. Katarino reportedly tried arguing his case on the basis of being a so-called sovereign citizen. This fringe political movement consists largely of anarchists who do not believe in the government's right to impose laws. As Katarino's behavior became increasingly disruptive, the judge Daniel Lacayo ordered a bailiff to place him in a separate holding area. When the bailiff tried to escort him away, Katarino allegedly grabbed her by the ponytail, pulled her to the ground, and punched her repeatedly. Judge Lacayo and the prosecutor, Jacob Salinas, rushed over and began fighting with Katarino in an attempt to subdue him. The altercation finally ended when the bailiff managed to get a hold of her taser. Salinas received a secondary shock when she deployed it, but they at least managed to get Katarino under control. He was charged with 3 counts of felony assault, in addition to the allegations he was already facing. During his next court hearing to address the new charges, Katarino was noticeably calmer. The prosecutor argued that if the defendant managed to pose a danger in one of the safest and most secure places in Harris County, then he certainly shouldn't be allowed to wander around in public. The judge agreed and ordered for Katarino to be held without bail. While the outcome of the case is unclear, there doesn't appear to be anyone by Katarino's name serving time in the state prison system. 10. Gilbert Augustine. A 66-year-old Sikh man from New York City named Yasma Singh was driving his wife home from a doctor's appointment in Queens, New York one afternoon in October 2023 when his Toyota struck a Ford Mustang on the Van Wyck Expressway. It was a minor collision, but it generated a massive reaction from the driver of the Mustang, 30-year-old Gilbert Augustine. Witnesses later told police that Augustine repeatedly called Singh Turban Man and said no police before reaching into the driver's side of the senior citizen's car and yanking his cell phone out of his hand. Singh exited his car and followed Augustine, then grabbed his phone back. He was walking back to his car when Augustine allegedly punched him in the face and head 3 times, striking him so hard that he fell backwards onto the pavement, landing on the back of his head. Emergency responders rushed Singh to a nearby hospital, where he died the next day from a severe brain injury. Augustine now faces hate crime charges for manslaughter and assault, and is being held without bail pending the outcome of his case. If convicted, he could face up to 25 years in prison. 9. Ryan Hunter. Over a period of time lasting at least 3 years, an anger-prone British man named Ryan Hunter subjected his girlfriend to horrific abuse at their shared home in Liverpool. His explosive tantrums were triggered by the smallest things, according to the woman, who told authorities that she essentially lived like a slave after Hunter began dating another woman in 2017, but refused to move out of her apartment. In addition to enduring prolonged physical and mental abuse, she said she was forced to wait on Hunter hand and foot while he helped himself to her money and spent it on gambling and drugs. When the victim tried to break up with Hunter, he allegedly threatened to kill her and take their child away from her. On another occasion, when the woman failed to make Hunter's tea to his liking, he smashed the cup and threatened to douse her with hot water. During one disagreement, he stabbed the victim in the leg and punched her in the mouth, breaking one of her teeth. Hunter was also accused of punching and strangling his ex-girlfriend when he discovered that she hadn't done his laundry. In another disturbing incident, the victim took longer than planned to run an errand and was met by screaming and death threats when she arrived home. The woman finally escaped the relationship later that day after being thrown against a wall and having a phone thrown at her. She went to the police, and Hunter was arrested on multiple charges. In 2023, Hunter pleaded guilty to 2 counts of engaging in controlling and coercive behavior and 2 counts of assault occasioning actual bodily harm. He was also convicted of producing cannabis in a separate case. 33-year-old's lawyer urged the judge to spare him from prison time, but he was sentenced to 5 years behind bars and banned indefinitely from contacting or going near the victim. 8. William Weaver. Late one morning in June of 2020, police in Manitou Springs, Colorado, received a call from a woman who said her ex-husband had confessed to murdering his current wife. The caller had received several Facebook messages from 49-year-old William Weaver, admitting to the crime and stating that he was preparing to turn himself in. Officers visited Weaver's home, where they found 50-year-old Wendy Cupid dead on the floor and covered in blood, with a bloody kitchen knife lying next to her head and another beneath her body. Weaver surrendered at the scene and said he was willing to confess. Police noticed that he was covered in cuts and bite marks, and he smelled of booze. According to court documents, Weaver said that he got sick of Wendy ridiculing him and that she'd mocked him for not making enough money. He took a walk to cool off and returned about an hour later. The couple drank alcohol and watched movies together, but eventually started arguing again. Weaver claimed that Wendy hit him multiple times, threatened to file a false police report accusing him of assault, and taunted him while laughing in his face. Unable to control his temper, Weaver snapped and began hitting his wife. After slapping her several times, he tried to strangle her, but he was too drunk to effectively kill her. Instead of just stopping and getting out of the situation like he should have, he left the room and grabbed a kitchen knife. When he returned, Wendy allegedly taunted him and said that he wouldn't stab her. Weaver responded to the challenge by slashing his wife across the forearms, at which point she made a run for the front door. During the struggle that followed, Wendy bit her husband in an attempt to fight him off, but she failed to get away before Weaver plunged the knife into her abdomen and proceeded to kill her. Weaver made several incriminating statements during the police interrogation, including, "She was talking shit all the way to the end. Once I started stabbing her, it was over pretty quickly, and I understand I did something very, very wrong." He was convicted of Wendy's murder and sentenced to life without parole. 7. Kaye Renee Medina. A 61-year-old Texas man was reduced to crawling out of his house and yelling for help during the early morning hours after a woman he met on a sugar daddy dating website allegedly attacked him in November 2023. According to the Bexar County Sheriff's Department, the victim met 26-year-old Kaye Renee Medina through Seeking, a dating platform designed to help wealthy benefactors and cash-hungry attractive singles find each other. After meeting with Medina for dinner, the man decided he wasn't interested in seeing her again but he stayed in touch with her over text message. He would later tell police that she randomly showed up at his house at 2:30 in the morning and that he let her in. According to law enforcement, Medina suddenly asked for $2,000 cash. When the victim said he didn't have that kind of money, she allegedly freaked out and trashed his home, destroying his TV, entertainment center, a painting, and an entertainment system. Several walls were also damaged during the tirade. The man said that when he told Medina to stop destroying his home, she poured laundry detergent over his head. Blinded by the chemicals, he crawled outside and yelled until someone called for help. He was treated at the hospital for the burns to his eyes and lacerations to his legs. Medina is further accused of fleeing the scene with the victim's passport, iPhone, security camera, and blow dryer. She was charged with robbery and released on a $20,000 bond. Shortly after the initial charge was announced, she was picked up on a DWI warrant and was additionally charged with continuous family violence due to an alleged pattern of aggressive behavior in domestic settings. During a press conference, Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar described Medina as no stranger to the law, with 3 DWIs on her rap sheet and several past arrests for assault and aggravated assault. 6. Pedro Argote. Everyone knows that child custody battles can get ugly, but a 49-year-old Maryland man named Pedro Argote took it to a whole new level in October 2023 when he gunned down a judge who had revoked custody of his 4 children just hours earlier. The contentious dispute between Argote and his ex-wife Eugenia began more than a year earlier when his ex petitioned the court for an order of protection. Eugenia accused Pedro of prolonged abuse, claiming that she'd tried to escape years earlier, but she didn't have the help or resources she needed to safely leave the marriage. She eventually divorced Argote, but she endured continued torment at the hands of her ex-husband, who allegedly sent her harassing text messages, monitored her obsessively, and threatened to falsely accuse her of neglecting their kids in order to get them taken away from her. Despite the intimidating behavior, Eugenia refused to back down. Finally able to stand on her own 2 feet, she fought fiercely in court to protect her family from Pedro. Her accusations were backed by Pedro's adult daughter from a previous relationship, who testified that her father exercised complete control over the family's lives and subjected them to terrifying cruelty, isolation, and violence. After hearing the harrowing details of the alleged abuse, Judge Andrew Wilkinson awarded full custody to Eugenia, along with sole possession of the marital home. He banned Pedro from any visitation or contact with the family. Argote was absent from the final hearing, but showed up at the judge's home in Haggerston a few hours later and fatally shot the 52-year-old in his driveway. Argote immediately went on the run, sparking a multi-agency national manhunt. 2 days later, his SUV was found abandoned in a remote wooded area filled with deserted buildings. After combing through the area for several more days, officers found Argote dead in the forest, about a mile from where his vehicle was located. While this unfortunately means that he'll never be brought to justice for killing Wilkinson, his family can now allow themselves to start feeling safe as they heal from their trauma. 5. Miio Bonia. In November 2023, police responded to a call about a crazed man destroying his surroundings with a baseball bat at a Target store in Yuba City, California. Responding officers arrived right as the suspect was exiting the store with the baseball bat in his hand. Identified by law enforcement as 25-year-old Miio Bonia, the man had reportedly just been fired from his job at the store when he went on his rampage. The value of the damages and loss of property was estimated at $100,000. In addition to destroying merchandise, Bonia allegedly smashed credit card readers, glass refrigerator doors, and other items. Customers and employees were forced to evacuate the store amid the chaos. Thankfully, no one was injured. Bonia was charged with burglary, felony vandalism, and wearing a mask for an unlawful purpose. Records show that he remains locked up at the Sutter County Jail on a $15,400 bond. 4. Donovan Matthews. In what police described as a road rage incident that occurred outside a Chick-fil-A restaurant in Palm Coast, Florida in November 23, a suspect later identified as 36-year-old Donovan Matthews got into a verbal altercation with the man and the woman in another vehicle. The man he was arguing with allegedly threw a cup of cold coffee at him and the couple left the business. According to an arrest report, Matthews chased after the pair with his car and deliberately crashed into their vehicle near an intersection. Both parties exited their cars and the confrontation continued. Deputies later said that Matthews tried to hit the woman, but the man she was with intervened, leading to a struggle between him and Matthews, who allegedly hit him repeatedly. Authorities charged Matthews with 3 felonies, including aggravated battery and assault. 3. Vladimir Siderov, a 35-year-old veterinarian from Russia's Tatarstan region named Vladimir Siderov was at home watching his kids one day in late 2016 when he became suspicious of his best friend, who'd supposedly given his wife a ride to see her friend. Vladimir found out that his wife hadn't visited her friend like she claimed she was going to do, and his buddy wasn't answering the phone. So, he walked over to the man's house in Sharma village, where he reportedly caught his wife and his best friend in the middle of an intimate situation. A discovery like this would understandably cause just about anyone to become angry and upset, but a certain degree of self-control is required to avoid getting arrested. Vladimir either wasn't thinking about the prospect of legal problems, or he simply didn't care when he stabbed the philandering pair in a frenzied knife attack. In addition to killing both parties, he castrated his friend. After all was said and done, Vladimir called the police and confessed to the murders. Authorities released limited details about the outcome of the incident, but it's probably safe to assume he's serving time in prison. 2. Joria Jermaine Britton. In September 2023, the body of a missing 18-year-old Texas woman named Deja Hood was found in a creek bed behind an apartment complex in Tyler. She'd been bludgeoned and stabbed to death, wrapped in plastic and sheets, and discarded like a meaningless afterthought. Police turned to 19-year-old Joria Jermaine Britton, who lived in one of the nearby buildings and was the last person Hood was seen with. After giving investigators a story that they quickly proved was false, he allegedly confessed to murdering Hood in a fit of rage while she was helping him move. According to the next version of events Britton gave to police, he called up Hood on the day of the murder and asked for her help moving. The accused killer said he picked Hood up at her home and brought her to his apartment, along with a child she was babysitting at the time. At the time, Britton had recently gone through a breakup, causing him to struggle with lingering anger over how the relationship ended. He was thinking about it when Hood entered his kitchen and playfully tugged on his ear, which his ex-girlfriend used to do. It was enough to send him into an uncontrollable fit of rage just moments later, when he approached Hood from behind with a wine bottle in hand and smashed it against her head. Britton told police that he proceeded to approach Hood, who had fallen onto the floor, and punched her in the face before attempting to strangle her. He grabbed a nearby hammer and struck the young woman repeatedly in the head until the handle broke. At some point during the incident, a neighbor overheard loud noise coming from the apartment and stopped by to check on Britton. He said everything was okay and went back inside, where he retrieved the child Hood was babysitting and drove the kid to Hood's mother's house. After quickly handing the child over, he drove back to his apartment, where he discovered Hood was still clinging to life and calling out for him. Britton finished the job by stabbing his friend several times. He waited to dispose of her body until the early morning hours, when he carried her remains out back and tossed her over a fence. The accused murderer remains behind bars on suspicion of murder and making a terroristic threat. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. 1. Scott Onamac. While responding to a reported car wreck in Spartanburg County, South Carolina one afternoon in December 2022, deputies arrived to find 2 men sitting next to an overturned car near a residential street. Also at the scene was 57-year-old Scott Onamac, who admitted to ramming his pickup truck into the car and running it off the road in a fit of road rage. Onamac reportedly told deputies that he became upset when he saw the car driving at a dangerously high speed. He said he blanked out from anger and decided he was going to make a difference by striking the vehicle. According to an incident report, Onamac acknowledged that he knew his actions were wrong, but said something just snapped. He also allegedly admitted that he wanted to hurt the people in the sedan. The victims were injured but survived, and Onamac was charged with 2 counts of attempted murder. He was released on a $15,000 bond and ordered to return to court at a later date. While the outcome of the case is unclear, state prison records show that nobody by the name of Scott Onamac is in custody at this time.
Number 10. Lauren Stacy. During a girls' trip to Barbados in 2019, 26-year-old British national Lauren Stacy missed a spot on her forehead while applying sunblock. The next day, she couldn't even open her eyes when she woke up because of how swollen her face was. She was still extremely swollen when it was time to go home, and was mortified when a face scanner at the airport didn't recognize her. Stacy was suffering from a condition called cholinergic urticaria. In simple terms, it's a case of hives brought on by extreme heat and an increased body temperature. Thankfully, a treatment of steroids and antihistamines took care of the problem. As summer temperatures in England approached sweltering levels in 2021, Stacy used her experience as a cautionary tale for other Brits as a reminder to wear sunscreen. Number 9. Alexandra Holman. During a trip home in Santa Barbara, California to Zanzibar in 2022, 23-year-old Alexandra Holman sat for hours getting henna tattoos that covered her arms, hands, and shoulders. A week later, her skin became covered in itchy pimples. Holman tried to scrub the tattoos off, but by then the damage was done. She was having an allergic reaction to the ink, causing her to suffer from excruciating chemical burns that left permanent scarring. The young photographer was bedbound for 2 weeks as she endured pain so torturous that it caused her to scream, cry, and feel like she was being burned alive. It got so bad that she went to the hospital, where she received steroids and antihistamines. She told the Daily Mail that a roommate had to handcuff her with a towel before she went to bed so that she didn't scratch her skin in her sleep. The severe reaction came as a surprise to Holman, who had gotten henna tattoos done many times before without any issues. She was even more shocked to realize that she had unintentionally made her condition worse by touching up the tattoos herself after getting them, and before she started experiencing symptoms. And once she received treatment, she had no choice but to simply wait it out until relief came. Number 8. Shiv Mystery. While on vacation with his friends in Spain's Costa del Sol region in 2022, 18-year-old British national Shiv Mystery took one sip of a piña colada at a bar and went into anaphylactic shock. He had mistakenly believed that the drink was made from coconut cream and contained no real cream, so he wasn't worried about his severe dairy allergy until he tasted the drink and realized that it contained cow's milk. Unfortunately, it cost the young man his life just weeks before he was due to start studying medicine at Cambridge. During an inquest, Mystery's parents described how the teen went back to the apartment he was staying in. He told his friends he wasn't feeling well and took an antihistamine, but by then he was hyperventilating and sweating. Then he collapsed. Friends and emergency responders tried desperately to revive Mystery, but it was too late. The tragedy came as a reminder that even after a lifetime of living with a severe allergy, sometimes all it takes is just a momentary brush with the item for the effects to be fatal. The inquest found that the bartender who served the lethal drink had made it improperly, and that it was supposed to contain coconut cream and no dairy products. Mystery's parents commended his friends and emergency responders for reacting to the situation quickly and properly, but they considered their son lucky for this and called for better education of youth on how to best handle medical emergencies. Number 7. Shena McNeil. After dyeing her hair with her usual product in early 2022, 29-year-old Shena McNeil was shocked to wake up the next day with a swollen forehead. Throughout the day, the Houston-based tech coordinator started suffering other telltale signs of an allergic reaction, including a burning rash and increased swelling. McNeil joked that she looked like an emoji, but the situation took a less humorous turn when she had to seek medical attention and learned that her throat could swell shut and cause her to suffocate. She spent 2 weeks on antihistamines and steroids before the swelling finally went down, and things got worse before they improved. At one point, McNeil's eyes were swollen shut. When the pain and swelling failed to subside, she went to the hospital and received even more medication. She was also kept under observation for several hours before the doctors let her go home. McNeil was also left with eczema and a handful of bald patches from the adverse reaction, and she said that it was painful to brush her hair. She chose to stop dyeing her hair, and the experience compelled her to warn others to patch test their hair dye before going all in with each dye job, just to be safe. Number 6. Poy Jones. 39-year-old Joanna Jones and her teenage daughter Poppy were on a British Airways flight from Antigua to London in 2022, when at least one passenger ignored the crew member's caution not to eat peanuts, because Poppy is severely allergic. A man roughly 10 rows ahead of the pair decided to snack on the nuts anyway. Worried about her daughter's safety, Joanna asked a flight attendant if they could be moved further away from the man. The crew member said that there were no seats available and asked him to stop eating peanuts, but he continued. Soon enough, Poppy began to have an anaphylactic reaction. Her mother administered 2 EpiPen shots while the nurse who was on board came over to help. Poppy ended up needing oxygen, and her condition got so bad that the captain considered making an emergency landing. The pilots decided to continue on to their destination. Once the plane touched down, Poppy was rushed to the emergency room. Luckily, she survived. Joanna told the Daily Mail that she wished airlines would do more to protect passengers with severe allergies, and that it should be illegal for someone to eat peanuts on a plane if someone on it is allergic. Number 5. Andrew Honeybell. 51-year-old father of 4 Andrew Honeybell missed out on his son's wedding reception in 2022 when he was served the wrong meal at the beginning of the event. When he arrived at the venue in the English town of Epping right before lunch, he made sure to tell the catering staff that he has major egg and fish allergies. Honeybell double and triple checked before the food was served and as the server was putting his plate on the table. All 3 times, employees reassured him that his meal was safe for someone with his allergies. But they were wrong, and Honeybell began to feel sick after finishing his meal. He scrambled to the bathroom, where his son found him a few minutes later. The newlywed groom told his father that staff members had admitted to serving him the wrong meal. Honeybell's son and an employee carried him back to the room, where he injected his EpiPen. By then, he was gasping and struggling to breathe. Right as the ambulance was about to take Honeybell away, an employee handed him a liability notice, clarifying their mistake and offering to cover expenses for a longer hotel stay if necessary. But this came as little comfort to the ailing father, who missed out on the most important and meaningful day of his son's life. He told Essex Live that it was hard to even watch videos of the event. On top of being devastated, Honeybell was angry at the carelessness of the catering employees who told him not once, not twice, but 3 times that his food was perfectly safe to eat. He also accused the wedding insurer of treating him like a criminal and responding rudely to his complaints by saying that they don't pay for memories. Both companies apologized for Honeybell's distressing experience, but declined to say much more about his unresolved claims. Number 4. Natasha Ednan Laperouse. Before catching a flight to Nice, France with her father for a vacation in 2016, Natasha Ednan Laperouse got a baguette at Pret-a-Manger inside Heathrow Airport. The teen was unaware that it contained sesame seeds, which she is deathly allergic to. During the flight, Natasha became unwell. Her father injected her with 2 EpiPens worth of adrenaline, but her condition continued to worsen. When they arrived in France, Natasha was rushed to the hospital, but there was nothing doctors could do to save her. As she lay dying, her father Nadim called her mother so she could say her final goodbye. Coroner Dr. Sean Cummings determined that Natasha's death could have been prevented if the baguette she ordered had come with some sort of warning about any allergens it contains. Because it was made on site, it was exempt from any laws that normally require companies to attach allergen labels to their products. The company that manufactures EpiPens was also criticized for using a needle that was designed for lean male military recruits. In other words, the shot may have been too short to reach Natasha's muscle. In 2022, the BBC reported that Natasha's parents were holding a trial to look into the possibility of using everyday food items as treatments for food allergies. The experimental immunotherapy would attempt to desensitize patients to certain foods for a year, followed by 2 years of monitoring to see how they respond to the treatment. Natasha's mother and father also played an imperative role in the establishment of a new law that requires allergen labels for foods that are made on site. Number 3. Choked by chips. Nathan Morrison was shocked when his son almost died from eating fries during a family meal in the English seaside town of Burnham-on-Sea in 2022. The restaurant that Nathan, his wife, and their 2 young children were eating at advertised barcodes that it claimed customers could scan to check certain menu items for allergens. This was reassuring to the Morrisons, whose 7-year-old son Caleb suffers from deadly shellfish and milk allergies. Caleb was eating fries when his lips suddenly started to swell. Nathan took him into a bathroom and injected his EpiPen while his wife called for an ambulance. By the time paramedics arrived, Caleb's entire face was swollen and he was struggling to breathe. His father later claimed that staff held the ambulance at the resort's entrance for several minutes before allowing it to proceed to the restaurant, and they also allegedly made Nathan fill out a stack of paperwork before allowing him to go to the hospital to be with Caleb. During the ride to the hospital, the little boy went into anaphylactic shock yet again. He was held overnight at the hospital. A company spokesperson claimed that staff members tell all customers that they can't guarantee any foods are allergen-free, but that customer safety is their #1 priority, and that the Morrisons received proper medical support during Caleb's emergency. While there are always 2 sides to each story, it's understandable that the family was upset after thinking that the restaurant's specialized barcodes were delivering inaccurate information about allergens. Number 2. Deadly drink. In the first documented incident of its kind, a case report from 2018 details how a 29-year-old Italian woman took 1 sip of flavored beer and had an anaphylactic reaction just minutes later. The beer had coriander in it, and as it turned out, she was deadly allergic. A life-threatening aversion to coriander is rare but not unheard of, and people have had allergic reactions to beer in the past. But this was the first known example of someone becoming anaphylactic from beer with coriander in it. Most beer-related allergies are caused by barley, hops, yeast, or wheat. At the time, the woman was unaware of her allergy to coriander. Luckily, doctors were able to get her symptoms under control within an hour using antihistamines. A few months later, she went to a local hospital for tests to get to the bottom of her anaphylactic reaction. She reported that she had not taken any medications and had no known allergies, deepening the mystery. But she was an avid beer drinker, and by the time she went in for the testing, she had become suspicious about the specific beer she was drinking when the alarming incident occurred. Experts contacted the brewery and learned that coriander powder was an ingredient in the beer, but that it wasn't specified on the label. Further testing confirmed that the woman was allergic to coriander. She left the hospital with an EpiPen just in case another emergency happens in the future. Number 1. Celia Marsh. During a winter shopping trip to Bath, England in 2017 with her husband and 3 daughters, mother of 5 Celia Marsh ate a rainbow wrap from a pret-a-manger. The 42-year-old thought it was safe for her to eat, despite her severe dairy allergy, because it was advertised as a vegan menu item. Marsh was being especially careful about what she ate after suffering a severe reaction just months earlier from eating some marshmallows. She always checked labels and asked employees about ingredients, and the rainbow wrap nevertheless caused her to start feeling funny. Celia's widower, Andy Marsh, recalled during a hearing into his wife's death that she puffed her inhaler a few times while walking around with her family. At first, she thought she might be having trouble breathing because of the cold air. Andy said that he encouraged Celia to use her EpiPen if she thought there was even a slight chance she was having an allergic reaction, but she never got the chance to do so, before telling him moments later to call an ambulance and collapsing onto the ground. Celia died from her injuries. An inquest found that the rainbow wrap contained yogurt that was supposed to be vegan, but contained traces of dairy protein. Pret-a-Manger was accused of failing to check its supplier's claim that the wrap was dairy-free, and that the company should have conducted its own testing on the ingredients.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather work under a hot-headed boss who's prone to throwing explosive tantrums over basic things, like having to answer the same question twice? Or have an overly emotional roommate who gets upset over things like your facial expression and tone of voice, even when you don't mean to offend them? Let us know in the comments and remember to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.